Hello everyone, and welcome to Dead Time Stories. Tonight, the storm outside isn't the only thing brewing. True tales so chilling they'll make your skin crawl, yet so mesmerizing you won't be able to turn away. But here's the twist. That distant thunder isn't just atmosphere. It's the key to unlocking your deepest sleep. So before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. Evan Klein took the night job because nothing happened in the middle of nowhere. That was the selling point. The little station at Bryer County Junction wasn't even a dot on most maps, just a thin platform, a locked office, and a vending machine that ate dollars like it was hungry. Freight trains rolled through sometimes, rattling the windows, but they never stopped. Not here. Evan's supervisor had laughed when he handed him the keys. "You'll be bored to death. Bring a book." Evan brought 3. On his first week, he read them all. On his second week, he started listening to the quiet. The way the wind combed through the grass. The way the old fluorescent light above the bench buzzed like a trapped insect. The way the clock, big, round, cheap, ticked with the confidence of something that had never been wrong. At 2:16 a.m., the quiet changed. It tightened. Evan looked up from his paperwork, pen hovering. The air felt heavier, like the station had sunk an inch into the earth. "What the?" he murmured, and checked the security monitor. The platform camera showed nothing, just the bench, the vending machine, and the black strip of tracks stretching both directions. The clock clicked over. 2:17. The platform lights flickered once. Twice. And then the train arrived. Not with a horn, not with a screech, just there, sliding in like a shadow, remembering how to be solid. It was long. Black. Its windows reflected the station lights wrong, like the glass was deeper than it should be. Evan pushed open the office door and stepped onto the platform, cold air biting his face. "Hello?" he called, trying to sound annoyed instead of nervous. "This isn't a schedule." The doors opened with a soft psshh. People stepped out. Maybe 20 of them. Men, women, a couple teenagers. All walking slowly, eyes half-lidded, faces pale under the buzzing light. None of them spoke. Their shoes made a dull, damp sound on the concrete, as if they'd been walking through fog. Evan tried again, louder. "Hey! Ticket check. Where are you headed?" A woman in a heavy coat passed him without looking. Her hair was braided down her back. Her hands were folded like she was holding something invisible. A man with a limp muttered numbers under his breath. 6, 7, 8. A boy, maybe 10, clutched a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. Evan's throat went dry. "Kid? You okay?" The boy's eyes slid toward him like they were dragged. For a moment, Evan thought he'd answer. Instead, the boy turned and followed the others off the platform, toward the gravel road that led into the fields. Evan watched them go, heart thumping, waiting for someone, anyone, to turn around. No one did. Behind him, the train doors sighed shut. When Evan spun back, the train was already moving, silent, smooth, pulling away into the dark like it had never stopped at all. And then it was gone. Evan stood alone under the buzzing light, the tall grass whispering beyond the platform. The clock kept ticking, as if nothing had happened. Evan didn't sleep after that. He sat in the office with the door locked and every light on, drinking stale coffee and replaying the night in his head like a prank call you couldn't hang up on. At 6 a.m., when his replacement arrived, Marcy, a middle-aged woman who smelled like peppermint gum and morning news, Evan blurted it out before she could put her bag down. "A train stopped here." Marcy blinked at him. "Freight?" "No. Passenger. Like a real passenger train. It opened its doors. People got off." Marcy stared a little longer, then laughed once, unsure. "Evan, you look like you fought a bear." "I'm serious." She sobered, finally noticing his hands shaking. Okay, maybe a reroute. Maybe an emergency stop. At 2:17 a.m.? With no horn?" Marcy didn't answer that. She just chewed her gum and glanced toward the platform like it might still be out there. Evan drove home in daylight, but the road felt unfamiliar. The fields looked wider than they should. The clouds seemed too low, like the sky was leaning in to hear what he'd say. He called his supervisor, Daryl, as soon as he walked through his apartment door. Daryl answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "This better be important." "There was a train," Evan said. "Last night. It stopped at the station. It wasn't scheduled. People got off and walked down Old Mill Road into the fields." A pause. Then, "You drinking on shift?" "No." "You dreaming?" "No." Evan pressed his fingers into his eyes. "Check the cameras. The platform footage." "Fine," Daryl snapped. "I'll look." "Go sleep it off." Evan didn't sleep. He waited, phone in hand, pacing, until Daryl called back. His supervisor's voice had changed. Not disbelief anymore. Something smaller. "I checked," Daryl said quietly. And at 2:17, the feed goes to static for 12 seconds. Evan felt a cold bloom in his stomach. Static? Like interference? Like the tape doesn't want to remember. Daryl swallowed. Evan could hear it. "When it comes back, the platform's empty." "But I saw them." "I know," Daryl whispered, and then, like he was speaking to someone else in the room, "Christ, it's back." Evan gripped the phone. "What do you mean, it's back?" Daryl didn't answer right away. Outside Evan's window, a breeze stirred the curtain, though the window was closed. Finally, Daryl said, "My dad worked that station. He told me a story when I was a kid. Said never take the night shift if they offered it." Said what?" Evan demanded. Daryl exhaled shakily. "Said at 2:17, the last train comes through. And it drops off people who don't belong anywhere else." Evan's mouth tasted like pennies. "That's not funny. I'm not joking. What happens to them?" Another pause. Longer. Then Daryl said, barely audible, "They walk until the road runs out." Evan's voice cracked. "And then?" Daryl's line went quiet for so long Evan thought the call had dropped. When Daryl finally spoke, his words were flat, careful. "Don't be there tonight." Evan stared at his phone. "I can't just not show up." "You can't," Daryl said. "You can quit. You can call in sick. You can wreck your car on purpose, for all I care." His voice sharpened. "Just don't be there at 2:17. Evan tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. "So what? The train's haunted." Daryl made a sound like a sob caught in his throat. "Evan, my dad never told ghost stories." Evan told himself he'd listen. He really did. All afternoon he walked around his apartment, making lists of excuses. Fever. Flat tire. Family emergency. He even picked up his keys twice, meaning to drive to the clinic and fake a note. But when the sun went down, dread didn't make him run. It made him curious. It made him feel like the station was a mouth, and his name was sitting on its tongue. At 11:45 p.m., Evan drove back to Briar County Junction with his headlights off for the last quarter mile, like a kid sneaking home past curfew. The fields on both sides were black waves. The grass leaned toward the road as if it recognized him. When he pulled into the lot, the station looked exactly as it always did, empty, boring, harmless. Evan unlocked the office, turned on the desk lamp, and sat. He tried to read. He tried to scroll his phone. He tried not to watch the clock. The ticking got louder anyway. At 2:10, his stomach began to knot. At 2:14, the vending machine hummed so hard the metal rattled. At 2:16, the world held its breath. Evan stood, palms sweaty, and stepped outside. The platform lights flickered. And the train arrived. Closer than he remembered. Bigger. Like it had learned the shape of the station, and decided it could take up more space. The windows weren't reflecting the lights tonight. They were reflecting the platform behind Evan, showing the bench from an angle that didn't exist. The doors opened. Fewer passengers this time. maybe 15. And among them, Evan's heart jerked, was the boy with the one-eared rabbit. The boy shuffled forward with the others, face blank, but when he reached Evan, he slowed. Evan crouched, forcing his voice gentle. "Hey, what's your name?" The boy's lips parted. No sound came out at first, like his throat had forgotten how. Then, in a thin whisper, he said, "I can't remember." Evan's skin prickled. "Do you know where you're going?" The boy's eyes flicked toward the road into the fields. His fingers tightened around the rabbit. "Where it ends," the boy whispered. Evan swallowed. "What's at the end?" The boy looked up at him, and for the first time, there was something sharp in his gaze, fear, maybe, or warning. "It's not a place," the boy said. Behind him, the other passengers kept walking. Evan reached out without thinking and touched the boy's sleeve. It was cold, too cold, like cloth left outside all winter. "Wait," Evan said. "Don't go. Stay here with me. We'll call someone." The boy's expression twisted, like the idea hurt. "I already stayed," he whispered. "I stayed too long." Evan's breath caught. "What do you mean?" The boy's eyes slid past Evan's shoulder, toward the train. And for the first time, Evan saw it clearly. There was someone standing inside the doorway. Not stepping out. Watching. A figure in a conductor's uniform so dark it blended into the train's interior. The face was pale and smooth, but the smile was practiced. Like it had been worn for years and years. The boy yanked his sleeve free. "Don't talk to it," the boy hissed, suddenly urgent. "Don't let it learn you." Then he turned and hurried after the others, Rabbit swinging at his side. Evan stood frozen as the conductor's eyes met his. The conductor lifted a gloved hand, almost politely, and nodded, as if to say, "Soon." Evan didn't remember walking back into the office. He only remembered the tick of the clock as if it had been moved closer to his ear, and the way his own breathing sounded too loud in a world that wanted quiet. On the security monitor, the platform camera showed a clean, empty rectangle of concrete under flickering lights. No train. No passengers. No conductor in the doorway. But Evan could still smell it, cold iron and something like wet newspaper. He rewound the footage anyway, fingers trembling on the mouse. At 2:17, the screen stuttered and filled with gray snow. Static hissed like an angry whisper. 12 seconds. Then the picture snapped back. Empty platform, bench, vending machine, nothing else. Evan sat back hard in the chair. "No," he said to the silent room, like the word might nail reality down. "No, no, no." His phone buzzed. Daryl. Evan stared at the caller ID like it was a threat, then answered. "You said don't be here." Daryl's voice came in low and raw. "Were you?" Evan swallowed. "Yes." A long exhale on the other end. "God help you. It's real," Evan said. "The conductor. There was a conductor. It looked at me." Daryl didn't respond for a beat. Then, "Did you speak to it?" "I know. I spoke to one of the passengers. A kid. He said don't talk to it. Don't let it learn you." The silence that followed felt like the line itself was holding its breath. Finally, Daryl said, "Listen to me carefully. When my dad told me about that train, he said the worst thing wasn't seeing it. The worst thing was being noticed by it." Evan's mouth went dry again. "What happens?" Daryl's voice cracked like a board under weight. "It starts making room for you." Evan stared at the office door, half expecting it to open by itself. "That's not, Daryl, come on. I'm not messing with you." Daryl lowered his voice. "You need to leave. Not tomorrow. Not after your shift. Now." Evan looked at the clock. 2:29 a.m. The station was still. The fields were still. The whole world looked like it had been paused. "I can't," Evan whispered, though he didn't know why. Pride? Stupidity? That deep human itch to prove something wasn't real? Daryl said. "Then at least don't go near Old Mill Road." Evan blinked. Why would I go? Because you'll want answers. Darryl sounded bitter, as if he'd once wanted them too. And that road is where answers go to rot. Evan's jaw tightened. He glanced out the office window. The gravel road beyond the platform was a thin pale cut into darkness, vanishing into tall grass that looked almost silver under the station lights. I have to know where they go. No, Darryl said sharply. You don't. You think knowledge fixes this? It doesn't. It just pulls you closer. Evan's fingers clenched around the phone. Then what do I do? Darryl hesitated, and that hesitation terrified Evan more than the train did. There's someone, Darryl said finally. An old woman in town. Ruth Caldwell. She used to work dispatch back when the rail lines were being reorganized. If anyone knows. A click on the line. Like someone had picked up another receiver. Evan's skin prickled. Darryl? He said. The click came again, followed by a soft scrape, like fabric brushing a microphone. Darryl, are you? A voice breathed into the phone. Not Darryl's. Not loud. Not even fully formed. Just a gentle, patient sound that carried words the way fog carries headlights. 2:17. Evan jerked the phone away from his ear and the line went dead. He stared at the black screen, heart punching his ribs. Then, outside, the vending machine hummed harder, as if it had heard something and was trying to warn him. Evan stood. His legs felt watery, but he forced them to move. He stepped out onto the platform. The station lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the grass, something clicked. An insect? A pebble? A footstep? The road sat there, waiting. Evan told himself he would just take a few steps. Just look. Just prove to himself that it was a normal road into normal fields. He walked to the edge of the platform where concrete met gravel. The first crunch under his shoe sounded like a gunshot in the quiet. He paused. Hello? He called, voice small. Is anyone out there? The fields didn't answer. He took another step. Another crunch. The air grew colder, not by wind but by presence, like he'd stepped into the shadow of something enormous. Then he saw it. A small object half buried at the edge of the road where the grass leaned in, a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. Evan crouched, pulse spiking. The rabbit's fur was damp. Not with dew. With something warmer. His stomach rolled. He turned the toy over and saw a tag sewn into the seam, faded but readable. Property of Briar County Elementary. And beneath it, in childlike marker, Caleb M. Evan's breath hitched. Caleb, he whispered, tasting the name. Behind him, the station lights flickered, once, twice, though it wasn't 2:17. Evan spun around. The platform was empty. The office door was closed. But on the far end of the platform, near where the tracks disappeared into darkness, a figure stood motionless. Black uniform. Pale face. The conductor. It didn't wave this time. It simply watched, head tilted slightly, like a teacher waiting for a student to finish an assignment. Evan backed up, gravel popping under his shoes. No, he said, forcing the word out. You're not, this isn't. The conductor's smile widened, slow as sunrise. Evan clutched the rabbit to his chest and ran. Not toward the office. Not toward his car. Toward town. Toward lights, people, noise, anything that could drown out the soft, patient certainty of that smile. Behind him, the grass whispered. And from very far away, down the rails, Evan thought he heard something for the first time. A faint, satisfied chime. Like a clock striking the hour. Evan drove too fast on the county road, tires spitting gravel, headlights shaking over the fields. The darkness outside his car looked thick, almost textured, as if he could reach out and scoop it. He kept seeing the conductor's face in the rearview mirror. Not actually there, just the memory of it superimposed on everything. That smile like a locked door. He didn't go home. Home meant being alone with his thoughts, and his thoughts were already full. Instead, he went straight into the small town of Briar Hollow, where the street lamps cast soft orange pools on wet pavement, and the diner sign blinked like it was pleading. At 3:11 a.m., the town should have been asleep. But the porch light on 18 Willow Bend was on. Evan parked crookedly at the curb and sat for a second, both hands on the steering wheel, breathing hard. The rabbit lay on the passenger seat, one ear flopped over like it was exhausted too. He walked up the path and knocked. Nothing. He knocked again, louder. "Ms. Caldwell? Ruth Caldwell? I'm sorry, my name is Evan Klein. I work the station. I need to talk to you." A beat. Then the porch light flickered. Evan's throat tightened. He imagined the conductor inside the house. No, not a house story, he told himself, but the fear didn't care what genre he wanted. The door opened a crack. A sharp face appeared, framed by gray hair pulled tight back from her skull. Her eyes were bright, unblinking, like someone who'd been awake for years. She looked Evan up and down. Then she looked at the rabbit in his hand. Her mouth pulled into something that wasn't a smile. "You touched the road," she said. Evan swallowed. How did you? You smell like it." Her gaze lifted to his face. "And you look like someone who's already heard the clock chime." Evan's voice came out thin. "Do you know about the train?" Ruth Caldwell opened the door wider. The inside of her home was dark behind her, but not inviting dark, more like a theater before the show starts. "I know," she said, "that you shouldn't have come here." Evan's pulse jumped. "Why?" Ruth leaned in close, and Evan smelled peppermint and something like dusty books. "Because," she whispered, "if it started watching you, it's listening too." From somewhere behind Evan, down the quiet street, a distant sound drifted through the town like a lullaby played on broken glass. A soft, metallic hiss. Evan turned his head sharply. At the far end of Willow Bend, where the street curved into darkness, the street lamp flickered. And beneath it, for just a second, a tall shape stood, black uniform, pale face. Then the light steadied, and it was gone. Ruth grabbed Evan's sleeve with surprising strength and yanked him inside. She shut the door and locked it with 3 fast clicks. Evan's breathing sounded huge in the darkness. Ruth didn't turn on a light. She just said very quietly, "Now we see how hungry it is." Inside Ruth Caldwell's place, the darkness wasn't cozy. It wasn't. Late-night lamp and a quilt. Darkness. It was the kind that felt managed, like she trained it to sit still. Evan stood in the entryway clutching the rabbit while Ruth moved with quick, practiced steps. She didn't switch on a light. She didn't even reach for a light. Instead, she drew the curtains tighter with a sharp tug and pressed her forehead to the window glass for a long moment, watching the street like it might blink first. Evan swallowed. "Why won't you turn anything on?" Ruth's voice was low. "Because bright things attract hungry things." "That's insane," Evan said automatically, then immediately regretted it. Ruth turned. In the dim, her eyes caught what little glow leaked through the curtains. "You saw it, didn't you? The uniform. The face. That polite grin." Evan's throat tightened. "Yes." Ruth nodded as if that confirmed something she'd been hoping wasn't true. "Then you don't get to use the word insane anymore." "Not about this." Evan held up the rabbit, as if it were evidence in a courtroom. "I found this at the edge of Old Mill Road. The boy had it. He talked to me." Ruth's head snapped up. "He spoke?" Evan nodded. "Just a little. He said his name. No, he said he couldn't remember his name. But the tag says Caleb M., Briar County Elementary." Ruth took the rabbit like it might bite. Her fingers traced the faded marker on the tag. Her mouth worked silently, like she was chewing on a memory. "Caleb Mercer," she said finally. Evan blinked. "You know him?" "I know of him." Ruth set the rabbit on a small table and pulled out a kitchen chair with a scrape that made Evan flinch. "Sit. Don't argue. If your legs give out later, you'll crack your skull and that'll just make everything easier for it." Evan sat. Ruth stayed standing. She seemed to prefer it, like sitting made her vulnerable. "How long has this been happening?" Evan asked. Ruth's laugh was short and sharp. Longer than you've been alive. Longer than your supervisor's father, too, though he probably thought it started with him. People love believing they're the first chapter. Evan's skin crawled. Then why doesn't anyone do something? Shut the line down. Call the railroad police. The news. Ruth lifted a hand. And tell them what? A train that doesn't exist stops at 2:17 and drops off silent passengers who walk into the fields? Evan hesitated. Ruth leaned closer, voice a rasp. It lives in the space between what people accept and what people deny. The more you drag it into the light, the more it learns the shape of the light. Evan remembered the boy's warning, don't let it learn you. He swallowed. What is it? Ruth's eyes slid toward the front door, as if she could hear something breathing on the other side. Then she said, It's a collector. A floorboard creaked somewhere deeper in the house. Evan jolted, twisting in his chair. Ruth didn't move at all. She only whispered, Don't look toward the sound. Evan froze. Why? Ruth's mouth barely moved. Because it loves being noticed. Evan stared at her in the dim. Is it in here? Ruth's eyes were calm, but her voice wasn't. Not yet. Another slow creak, closer this time. Evan's fingers dug into the chair seat. Ruth! She cut him off with a hiss. Listen. If it's followed you here, it's testing doors. Not wood and locks. Rules. Evan breathed through his nose, trying not to shake. What rules? Ruth's gaze sharpened. The oldest one. She tapped the clock on her wall with one bony finger. Evan hadn't even noticed it in the dark. The hands read 2:16. Evan's stomach dropped. That's not possible. It's... Ruth whispered. My clocks don't stay normal when the train is near. The second hand twitched. Outside, somewhere far down Willow Bend, a street lamp flickered once. Ruth leaned in so close Evan could smell peppermint and paper. If you hear the doors open, she whispered, you do not answer when it calls you by name. Evan's voice came out thin. It knows my name? Ruth didn't blink. The wall clock clicked over to 2:17. And in the silence that followed, Evan heard it, faint, metallic, patient. A soft PSSSHH. Like train doors opening. Right outside Ruth Caldwell's front door. The sound didn't belong on a quiet residential street. It didn't belong on a porch. But Evan heard it anyway, clear as a whisper in his ear, the pressurized sigh of doors sliding open. Ruth's eyes stayed on the front door. Don't move, she mouthed. Evan held his breath so hard his chest hurt. Then came a noise from the porch. Not footsteps. No, that would have been too normal. It was a settling, like weight shifting carefully into place. Like someone standing very still had decided to become a little more real. Evan's mind screamed at him to run. Instead he sat nailed to the chair, staring at the door like it might sprout a smile. Ruth lifted one finger to her lips. A gentle tap came from outside. Not a knock. A tap. Polite. Measured. Tap, tap. Evan's eyes widened. Ruth's mouth barely moved. It's asking, Evan whispered back. Asking for what? Ruth's pupils flicked to the rabbit on the table. For what you stole from the road. Tap, tap. Evan swallowed. I didn't steal it. I picked it up. Ruth's gaze flashed angry. That road doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about ownership. The tap became 3 taps, evenly spaced. Patient. Like a person who knew you had nowhere to be but afraid. Then, quietly, warmly, someone spoke from the porch. Evan. Evan's blood turned to ice. It wasn't Daryl. It wasn't Marcy. It wasn't anyone he knew. But it said his name the way a friend might, like it had practiced being friendly. Ruth's hand shot out and clamped on Evan's wrist, nails biting. Her whisper was fierce. Don't. Answer. Outside, the voice tried again, slightly brighter. Evan Klein. Night attendant. Evan felt the words land on him like a tag being tied to his collar. How does it know? he began. Ruth squeezed harder. It's learning you. The porch boards gave a soft, slow creak. Then the voice said something that made Evan's stomach twist with sudden, awful recognition. I believe you have Caleb's property. Evan stared at the rabbit. The wondered thing looked harmless in the dim, like a forgotten toy. Ruth whispered, It can't cross without permission. Not fully. But it can bargain. The voice on the porch softened, almost kind. Please open the door. Evan's mouth went dry. Every polite bone in his body wanted to obey. The request sounded so reasonable, so normal, like a neighbor needing help. Ruth leaned close to Evan's ear. It will use your manners against you. That's how it gets in. Outside, the voice sighed, almost disappointed. Evan, you don't want to be rude. Evan flinched. His heart hammered. Stop, he whispered, unable to help it. Ruth hissed. Not to it. The air in the room thickened, as if the darkness itself had leaned closer to hear. Outside, the voice paused. Then it chuckled, a small, controlled sound. Oh, it said gently. You can hear me well. Ruth's face went pale. Evan realized what he'd done. He hadn't opened the door. He hadn't said yes. But he had responded. And something about that felt like the first stitch in a seam being pulled tight. The porch boards creaked again, closer to the door now. Then came a sound Evan couldn't place at first. A tiny metal click, like a ticket punch. Ruth's voice trembled for the first time. It's marking you. Evan's breath came fast. What does that mean? Ruth didn't answer right away. Because at that exact moment, the doorknob, without turning, began to frost over from the inside out, white crystals spreading like veins. And through the wood, through the deadbolt, through the rules, Evan heard the faintest sound of a smile forming. Soon, the voice whispered, close enough now that it seemed to come from inside the door itself. 2:17. Ruth grabbed the rabbit and shoved it into Evan's hands. We're taking it back, she said, voice tight and shaking with fury. Now. Evan stared at her. Back to the road? Ruth's eyes were bright, feral. Back to the station. Another soft metallic click came from the porch. Ruth flinched, then squared her shoulders like someone preparing to walk into a storm. If you've been marked, she said, then you don't get to hide behind locks anymore. Ruth didn't grab a coat. That was the first thing Evan noticed as she shoved past him and yanked the front door open. Cold night air poured in, sharp and metallic, carrying the faint smell of iron and damp earth. The porch was empty. No conductor. No black shoes. No frost on the railings. Just the streetlight humming like nothing had happened. Evan's chest loosened for half a second, then tightened again when Ruth hissed. Don't relax. That's how it slips closer. She locked the door behind them and marched down the porch steps with surprising speed. Evan scrambled after her, clutching the rabbit to his chest like a life preserver. Ruth, he whispered harshly. What do you mean, blind spots? She didn't slow down. Places it doesn't see well. Places that don't behave the way it expects. Evan jogged to keep up. And the station is one of those? Ruth shot him a look. No. The station is its mouth. But even mouths have nerves they can't feel. They reached her car, an old sedan with peeling paint and a dashboard cluttered with mismatched clocks, none of them agreeing on the time. Ruth slid into the driver's seat and started the engine without turning on the headlights. Evan hesitated. You're driving without. Light announces intention. Ruth snapped. We don't want to be polite tonight. The car rolled forward, tires whispering on asphalt. As they drove, Evan noticed something wrong with the town. The streets looped too gently. Familiar buildings seemed to drift slightly out of place, like pieces on a board someone had bumped. How many people know about this? Evan asked quietly. Ruth snorted. No. A handful. Remember? Fewer. Most people feel it once or twice in their lives and then forget. Forgetting is the toll. Evan stared out the window. And the ones who don't forget? Ruth's jaw tightened. They end up riding. The word hung between them. They passed the diner. The eat sign flickered, then went dark. Evan swallowed. Caleb rode the train, didn't he? Yes, Ruth said. But he didn't leave right away. Evan's heart thumped. What does that mean? It means, Ruth said carefully, that some passengers get off more than once. Evan's grip tightened on the rabbit. Its fur felt warmer now, almost alive. They turned onto the road leading back toward the station, and Evan felt it immediately, that same pressure, that same tightening of the air. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't want to look. It buzzed again. Ruth glanced at him sharply. Don't answer. Evan pulled it out anyway. Unknown number. You left something behind. The message vanished before Evan could respond. His screen went black. Ruth swore under her breath. It's rushing. That's not good. Evan's voice shook. You said it was patient. It is, Ruth said grimly. But patience doesn't mean mercy. The station appeared ahead like a wound glowing in the dark. The platform lights buzzed louder than Evan remembered, throwing long shadows that stretched the wrong way. The grass beyond the tracks leaned inward, bowing slightly, as if the ground itself were listening. Ruth parked crookedly and killed the engine. Once we're out, we don't split up. Evan nodded. And if it shows up? Ruth opened her door. Then we don't run. That's your plan? Evan hissed. That's how you show it you're not prey. Evan didn't believe her, but he followed. The station felt different at night when you arrived by choice instead of duty. The air tasted old. The clock over the platform read 2:12, though Evan's watch insisted it was nearly 4. Ruth moved toward the edge of the platform, stopping just short of the gravel road. This is where Caleb lingered. Evan looked down. The gravel was disturbed, small footprints, half erased by time and wind. He got off, Ruth continued. And he didn't walk far enough. Not right away. He stayed near the station. Came back some nights. Watched. Evan's chest tightened. Why? Ruth's voice softened. Because the station still felt like here. And the road didn't. Evan crouched and placed the rabbit gently on the concrete near the edge. He said he stayed too long. Yes, Ruth said. Long enough for the conductor to notice. The temperature dropped. Evan felt it in his bones. Behind them, the rails sang, a low vibration, like something clearing its throat. Ruth didn't turn around. We leave it here. We don't wait. Evan hesitated. What if he comes back for it? Ruth's voice broke just slightly. Then at least he'll know where it belongs. The station clock clicked. 2:16. Evan's heart hammered. Ruth! I know. The platform lights flickered. The air tightened. And from far down the tracks, something began to glide forward, slow, smooth, inevitable. Ruth grabbed Evan's sleeve. Listen to me. If it speaks to you. I don't answer, Evan finished. Ruth nodded. And if it calls your name? Evan swallowed hard. I pretend I've forgotten it. The rails hummed louder. A shape took form in the darkness. And somewhere, very faintly, Evan thought he heard a child's voice, not afraid this time, but relieved, whisper. Thank you? The train arrived at 2:14 a.m. Ruth noticed first. Her hand tightened on Evan's sleeve, nails biting through denim. That's wrong, she whispered. It's never early. The rails began to glow, not with light, but with clarity, as if the darkness around them had decided to step aside. The vibration under Evan's feet deepened into something almost musical, a low note held too long. Evan's mouth went dry. What does early mean? Ruth didn't answer right away. She was staring down the tracks, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed like she was trying to remember the rules before they rewrote themselves. Early means, she said finally, that it doesn't want to wait anymore. The train slid into view, larger than before. Closer. Its windows no longer reflected the platform. Instead, they showed motion, fields rushing past, roads curving away, silhouettes walking and never stopping. The doors did not open. That was worse. The conductor stood in the doorway anyway, half in, half out. Its uniform was impossibly neat, every button catching the station light. Its face was smooth and pale, eyes dark and intent. When it smiled, Evan felt it in his teeth. "Good evening," the conductor said pleasantly. Ruth took a step forward before Evan could stop her. "You're early." The conductor tilted its head. "Time is flexible." Evan swallowed. The conductor's gaze slid to him. "You returned the item." "I didn't steal it," Evan said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. "It belonged to someone." The conductor's smile thinned. "Everything belongs to the route," Ruth snapped. "The boy stayed. That wasn't allowed." The air shifted. For the first time, the conductor's expression flickered, just a hairline crack. "Corrections must be made," it said calmly. "Seats must be filled." Evan's heart thudded. "So that's it? You just replace people?" The conductor looked almost amused. "Replace implies loss." The doors behind it slid open with a soft psshh. Inside the car, Evan saw rows of seats. Only one was empty, and it was near the front. The conductor gestured politely. "Mr. Klein, your stop is approaching." Ruth barked a harsh laugh. "You don't get him." The conductor's eyes never left Evan. "He has been marked." Evan felt it then, a strange pressure at his collarbone, like the memory of a ticket being clipped. He touched the spot and hissed. Ruth swore. "When?" "When he answered," the conductor said gently. Evan's chest tightened. "So what, if I get on, it all stops?" The conductor nodded once. "The route continues. The correction completes." Ruth grabbed Evan's arm. "Don't listen. That's how it lies. It never stops, it just moves the problem." The conductor leaned closer, voice dropping to something intimate. "You are tired, Evan. You are observant. You stayed." Evan's knees felt weak. The train hummed like a lullaby. Then, faint but unmistakable, the rabbit on the platform shifted. Evan's eyes snapped down. The stuffed rabbit's single ear twitched. And from somewhere behind the conductor, a child's voice whispered, not from the road, but from inside the train. "I don't want to ride anymore." The conductor's smile froze. Ruth moved fast. Faster than Evan would have thought possible for someone her age. She stepped between Evan and the conductor, planting her feet like she decided this exact spot was worth dying on. "You broke the pattern," she said. "You let him linger. You let him remember." The conductor's eyes darkened. "Memory is inefficient. Memory is sticky," Ruth shot back. "It clogs your nice clean route." The child's voice came again, clearer now. "I stayed because I was scared." Evan's breath hitched. "Caleb?" The train interior shimmered. The silhouettes in the seats shifted, restless. The conductor turned its head slowly, as if listening to something unpleasant. "You were not called." "I was left," the boy's voice said. "You miss me." Ruth leaned close to Evan and whispered urgently. "It can't leave seats empty. That's the rule, it can't bend." Evan's heart pounded. "Then why?" "Because it thought it could fix him later." The rabbit on the platform slumped, suddenly just cloth again. The conductor straightened, smile gone entirely now. "This deviation ends." The doors began to close. "No!" Evan shouted, lunging forward without thinking. The conductor's eyes snapped to him. "You are mine!" Evan felt the pull then, subtle, steady, like gravity changing its mind. The empty seat inside the train seemed to lean toward him. Ruth grabbed his jacket with both hands. "Remember something," she snarled. "Anything. Something it didn't give you." Evan's mind raced. He thought of the station light buzzing, the vending machine humming. The first night he chose the job because it was boring. "I chose this," Evan gasped. "I stayed because I wanted quiet." The pull weakened. The conductor stiffened. "Choice is irrelevant." It's not, Evan said, louder now. You don't collect the lost. You collect the ones who stopped choosing. The train shook. From inside, shapes pressed toward the windows, not faces, not quite, but attention. Watching. The child's voice rose stronger. I want to go home, Ruth shouted. There is no home on the route. The conductor recoiled as if struck. The empty seat collapsed, fabric folding in on itself, vanishing like it had never existed. The train screamed. Not with sound, but with absence. The lights on the platform blew out. When they flickered back on, the train was gone. No rails singing. No hum. Just silence. Evan collapsed to his knees, gasping. Ruth stood over him, shaking. The station clock ticked forward. 2:18. Ruth let out a long, broken breath. It'll be back, she said quietly. But not the same way. Evan stared down the dark tracks. Did we win? Ruth gave a tired, crooked smile. We reminded it that people aren't just seats. The wind moved through the grass. Far away, down Old Mill Road, something unwound. Briar Hollow didn't wake all at once. It woke in pieces. The first thing Evan noticed was the noise. Not sirens. Not shouting. Just movement. Doors opening earlier than usual. Cars starting and stopping twice, like their owners had forgotten where they were going. Voices carrying down the street with a question tucked inside them. Ruth noticed it too. They stood on the platform as dawn thinned the dark, the sky turning the color of old bruises. Ruth leaned on the railing, looking smaller now, as if the night had finally taken something from her. They'll start remembering, she said. Not everything. Not the train. Not yet. Evan rubbed his eyes. Then what? Ruth nodded toward town. Gaps. Unease. Stories that don't quite line up. People asking why a class photo has an empty space. Why a name on a trophy sounds familiar but belongs to no one. Evan swallowed. Caleb. Yes. As if summoned by the name, Evan's phone buzzed. This time it was Daryl. Evan answered. You okay? Daryl's voice was hoarse. I was going to ask you that. Half the town called dispatch this morning. Complaints. Missing time. A woman swears her brother came home last night after being gone 8 years. Evan closed his eyes. Did he stay? A pause. Then, no. He left again before sunrise. Walked down Old Mill Road. Ruth muttered. The road doesn't give back. It only echoes. Daryl continued. There's something else. The station clock, every clock on the platform, stopped at 2:17. Maintenance says they just won't tick. Evan felt a chill. Is the train coming tonight? Daryl exhaled. That's the thing. No one remembers it coming last night. Ruth stiffened. That's new. Evan frowned. Is that good? Ruth didn't answer. She was staring at the tracks, eyes narrowed. Collectors don't like being embarrassed, she said slowly. They change tactics. That afternoon, Evan walked through town and felt it everywhere. A woman paused mid-sentence, frowning. A man stared too long at the road. A child asked their mother why the playground had one more swing than kids who used it. At dusk, Evan found himself back at the station alone. He hadn't meant to come. But the place pulled at him now, not like a command, but like a habit you didn't realize you'd formed. The platform lights buzzed. The stopped clocks ticked silently. Evan sat on the bench and waited, heart slow but alert. At 2:17, nothing happened. No train. No hum. Just wind. Evan almost smiled. Then the vending machine clicked. A ticket slid out onto the tray. Blank. Warm. Ruth arrived just before midnight, eyes sharp, coat buttoned wrong. You felt it too, she said. Evan held up the blank ticket. It's not done. No, Ruth said. It's improvising. They stood together at the platform's edge, the road stretching out like a question no one wanted to finish asking. The train needs certainty, Ruth said. Destinations. Departures. Endings. Evan nodded slowly. And we took that away. Ruth studied him. You understand it more than you should. Evan hesitated. It understands me too. The air shifted, not tightening this time, but loosening, like a knot being tested. From far down the tracks came a sound Evan hadn't heard before. Footsteps. Not many. Just one set. A figure emerged from the darkness, not the conductor. Not a passenger. A boy. Caleb stood at the edge of the light, solid and unsure, rabbit tucked under his arm. His eyes were clear now. Afraid, but awake. Ruth's breath caught. That shouldn't be possible. Caleb looked at Evan. The seat went away. Evan knelt. Do you know where you are? Caleb nodded. I'm here. It keeps asking me where I'm going. Ruth whispered, almost reverent. It doesn't know what to do with someone who won't move. The wind picked up. The grass whispered louder. Far away, not down the tracks, not down the road, something shifted, confused. Evan stood. Then we don't give it an answer. Ruth smiled, slow and fierce. No route. No correction. The clocks on the platform twitched. Not forward. Not back. They stopped trying. In the distance, a train horn sounded for the first time, lost, uncertain, fading. Caleb squeezed the rabbit. Is it gone? Evan looked at Ruth. Ruth looked at the dark. It's still out there, she said softly. But it doesn't know where to stop anymore. Evan sat back on the bench as dawn crept in again. For the first time, the station felt like just a station. And the road. The road was only a road. The first copycat route appeared 3 towns over. Evan heard about it from a woman at the diner, the kind of place where rumors arrived before facts and stayed longer. She stirred her coffee too hard and said, You hear about the bus? Evan's hand stilled on his mug. What bus? She shrugged. Shows up at 4:03 a.m. sharp. No markings. Lets people off at the edge of the industrial park. Folks say it's been doing that all week. Ruth's words echoed in his head. Collectors don't like being embarrassed. That night, Evan drove past the station instead of stopping. He took Old Mill Road as far as he dared. It felt different now, less hungry, more confused. The grass still whispered, but it didn't lean in anymore. It leaned away. At the edge of town, Evan saw a new sign hammered into the dirt where there hadn't been one before. Temporary stop. No name. No destination. The sign rattled softly in the breeze. Evan didn't touch it. Ruth found him at the station 2 nights later. You need to stop walking alone, she said without greeting. Evan smiled thinly. You need to stop pretending you're surprised. She snorted, then went still. Something's wrong, she said. Evan followed her gaze. A man stood at the far end of the platform. Not in uniform. Jeans. Jacket. Hands in pockets. He looked normal. Too normal. He smiled like someone who'd practiced being human by watching too much television. Evening, the man said. Cold out, huh? Evan's pulse jumped. Who are you? The man chuckled. Just passing through, Ruth whispered. Don't answer questions. Evan held the man's gaze. You missed a spot. The smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. What spot? The man asked. The eyes, Evan said. You didn't practice those enough. The man sighed. His shoulders relaxed, like he was tired of holding something up. You make this difficult, he said, not angry, not sad. Just honest. Ruth stepped forward. You don't get to wear faces. I do now, the man replied mildly. You taught me. The platform lights dimmed. Evan felt the pull again, not toward a seat, but toward understanding. Toward the neatness of being part of something that didn't ask questions. He shook it off. You still don't know where to end. The man's smile slipped. Behind him, the tracks twisted, not visibly, but conceptually, like they were reconsidering their purpose. The man backed away. This isn't finished, he said. Evan nodded. It never was. The man vanished, not in a flash, not dramatically. Just wasn't there anymore. Like someone leaving a conversation before it could resolve. Caleb started school again. Not officially. Not on any roster. But he showed up at the playground every afternoon, rabbit tucked under his arm, and the other kids made room for him like they'd always known where he fit. Evan watched from a bench. Ruth sat beside him, quiet. You know, Evan said, I think it needs movement. That's why it collects. Ruth nodded. And you gave it stillness. Evan swallowed. Which means it'll keep circling. Ruth studied him. You're thinking about staying. Evan didn't deny it. Someone had to notice the routes. The signs. The stops that weren't supposed to be there. Someone had to sit in the quiet and refuse to be useful. The station clock ticked once. Then again. Not at 2:17. Just time. Ruth smiled, tired and proud. That might be the bravest thing anyone's done to it. Evan leaned back and watched the tracks disappear into ordinary distance. No hum. No pull. Just rails. And somewhere far away, something waited, confused, unfinished, and very, very patient. Evan learned the price of staying by the way his sleep changed. It wasn't nightmares, not at first. It was repetition. He dreamed of the same moment over and over, standing on the platform, watching a train that never arrived, listening to rails that never sang. In the dream, nothing happened. And that nothing pressed down on him until waking felt like surfacing from deep water. Ruth noticed before he said anything. You're thinner, she said one morning, handing him coffee he hadn't asked for. Not sick. Just less. Evan forced a smile. Guess I'm losing weight. Ruth didn't smile back. Collectors take in bulk. Anchors lose things slowly. That word, anchor, stuck with him. Evan began noticing gaps in himself. Not memories exactly, but edges. Songs he knew he used to like but couldn't hum. A neighbor's name that slid away when he tried to say it. The station still felt solid, but Evan felt porous. One night, while locking up, he caught his reflection in the office window and didn't recognize the way he was standing, feet planted too evenly, shoulders squared like he was bracing against the tide. He whispered, I'm still me. The reflection didn't answer. They came back wrong. Not all at once. Not loudly. Just a man here, a woman there, faces that flickered with recognition but no belonging. The grocery clerk who stared at the canned soup aisle for an hour, whispering numbers under his breath. The jogger who stopped at the edge of Old Mill Road every morning and wept without knowing why. Ruth called them returners. They didn't finish the route, she explained. And now the route doesn't know what to do with them. Evan watched one evening as a woman stood on the platform, suitcase in hand, eyes unfocused. Do you need help? Evan asked gently. She looked at him, relief flooding her face. Is this the last stop? Evan's chest tightened. No, he said carefully. This is just a place to stand. The woman nodded like that made sense. She sat on the bench and waited. She was gone by morning. Not boarded. Not walked away. Just gone. Ruth didn't scold Evan. But she said quietly, Every time you tell them that, it listens. The new face arrived on a Tuesday. No uniform. No false smile. This one looked tired. She stood at the far end of the platform, hands empty, posture uncertain. When she spoke, her voice was low and unsteady, almost human. You're hurting them, she said. Evan crossed his arms. You're hurting everyone. The woman shook her head. I move things to where they belong. Ruth appeared beside Evan like she'd been summoned by tension alone. You don't know where that is. I did, the woman said softly. Until you broke the ending. Evan felt the pull, not strong, not violent. Just sad. What do you want? The woman looked down the tracks. Compromise. Ruth barked a humorless laugh. It doesn't compromise. It consumes. The woman met Ruth's eyes. It adapts. Evan understood then. It wasn't collecting now. It was negotiating. The offer came without ceremony. No 217. No humming rails. Just words spoken plainly in the dark. Stand in for me, the woman said. Just here. Just this place. Let me finish elsewhere. Ruth went rigid. No. Evan didn't answer right away. He felt the station around him, the concrete, the lights, the stopped clocks that had learned how to move again because of him. What happens to me? Evan asked. The woman hesitated. You become consistent. Ruth grabbed his arm. You become empty. Evan looked down Old Mill Road. It was quiet now. Just the road. How long? He asked. The woman's voice was almost kind. As long as it takes. Silence stretched. Then Evan shook his head. No routes. No endings. The woman closed her eyes. And for the first time, the collector looked afraid. The next weeks were heavy. The copycat routes collapsed. Bus stops vanished. Signs rotted overnight. The returners thinned. Caleb laughed more. But Evan's reflection grew dimmer. One night, Ruth said what they'd both been avoiding. You can't do this forever. Evan nodded. I know. So what happens? She asked. Evan stared down the tracks, where nothing waited and everything did. Eventually, it learns to stop. Ruth's voice broke. And you? Evan smiled, small but real. I think I'm what stopping costs. The wind moved through the grass. The station lights hummed steadily. No pull. No call. Just a man on a bench, choosing stillness in a world that wanted movement. And somewhere, lost, unfinished, and waiting, the route circled, not knowing where to end. Time broke on a Thursday. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just a skip, like a needle jumping a groove on an old record. Evan noticed when the station clock read 11:42 twice. Same light. Same wind. Same distant crow call. He blinked, frowned, and waited. The minute hand twitched forward, then jumped back. Evan stood slowly. His bones felt heavier than they should, like gravity had decided to lean on him personally. Ruth arrived an hour later, except her watch insisted it had been 5 minutes. You feel it, she said, not asking. Evan nodded. It's losing track. Or, Ruth said quietly, it's trying to keep you. The air around the station felt padded, muffled. Sounds arrived late. Evan clapped his hands once and heard the echo before the impact. That's new, he muttered. Ruth's jaw tightened. It's building a loop. If it can't move forward, it'll settle. Evan swallowed. Settle into what? Ruth looked at the bench. The platform. Evan. Into you. She showed up at dusk. No train. No warning. Just a woman standing at the platform edge, hair damp with sweat, eyes bright with panic. Don't let it take me again, she blurted when she saw Evan. Please. I woke up halfway down the road. I remembered my daughter. Evan's heart clenched. What's your name? She hesitated. It starts with an M. That was enough. Ruth shook her head sharply behind him. Evan ignored it. Sit, he said gently. Breathe. The woman sat. Trembled. The air tightened. From nowhere and everywhere, a voice slid in, quiet, reasonable. Unfinished passengers caused distortion. The woman screamed and clutched Evan's sleeve. That's it. That's it. Evan stood. No. The word hit the platform like a dropped tool. The pressure eased. The woman blinked, confused. Did I miss something? Ruth exhaled shakily. You did. The woman left before nightfall, walking toward town, not the road. The wind sighed. And somewhere, something recalculated. It came back without a face this time. Just a presence, thick, attentive, filling the space behind Evan's thoughts like a hand hovering near his shoulder. You are deteriorating, it observed. Evan didn't answer. You are not designed to be an ending, Ruth muttered. Says who? The presence shifted. Names anchor processes. Evan frowned. You want a name? A pause. Careful. Curious. Names define scope. Ruth stiffened. Don't. Evan thought of the road. The seats. The way it needed things to move. You're not a train, Evan said slowly. You're not even a collector. The pressure trembled. You're a habit. Silence. Then, smaller now, habits persist. Evan nodded. Not if you stop feeding them. The station lights steadied. For the first time, Evan felt the presence withdraw. Not gone, but thinking. Evan started writing things down. Not reports. Not logs. Lists of moments that didn't move. A crow sitting on a rail for an hour. Caleb reading on the steps. Ruth falling asleep mid-sentence. Stillness recorded. Each night he stayed, the pull weakened, but so did he. Ruth noticed his hands shaking now. You're fading. Evan smiled faintly. So is it. One evening, the presence returned, quiet, uncertain. If I stop, it asked, what am I? Evan closed his eyes. He was so tired. You're nothing, he said gently. And that's okay. The station breathed. The clocks ticked, normally. The road stayed empty. The presence lingered one last moment, then loosened, thinned, unraveled like fog under sun. Evan sagged onto the bench, dizzy, smiling. Ruth caught him. You did it, she whispered. Evan's voice was barely sound. Did it stop? Ruth nodded, tears in her eyes. Yes. Evan exhaled. And for the first time since 217 ever mattered. Nothing waited. Briar Hollow forgot. Not all at once. Not completely. Just enough. The station became a station again. No one talked about the road too long. Caleb grew up. Ruth moved away. And Evan stayed. Not as an anchor. Not as an ending. Just as a man who sat sometimes and watched trains that arrived when they should and left when they were meant to. Sometimes, late at night, the wind would hush just a little too much. And Evan would smile and think, still here. Then the moment would pass. And nothing. Beautiful, ordinary nothing. Would move at all. The first year after the route unraveled was called quiet by everyone except Evan. To them, it meant no missing people, no strange buses, no unmarked stops. The station passed inspections. The clock stayed honest. Old Mill Road grew weeds and potholes like any other forgotten stretch of asphalt. To Evan, the quiet felt alert. He learned the difference. Quiet as rest was soft. Quiet as waiting had weight. Some nights, Evan sat on the bench long after his shift ended, hands folded, listening. He wasn't expecting the train anymore. Not really. But he had learned that habits didn't die cleanly. They frayed. They tested. He wrote in a small notebook now. Not lists this time. Observations. Stillness can pretend to be sleep. Absence has echoes. Nothing doesn't mean safe. Once, at 1:58 a.m., he felt the old pressure, faint, embarrassed, like a memory trying to remember itself. He didn't move. He didn't speak. It passed. The station lights hummed. Evan smiled, tired and satisfied. He appeared in late autumn. No warning. No sound. Evan looked up from his notebook and found a man standing near the far end of the platform, hands clasped behind his back. The man wore a coat too thin for the cold. Evening, the man said pleasantly. Evan closed the notebook. You're early. The man blinked. For what? For choosing where you're going, Evan replied. The man's smile wavered. I thought this was a stop. Evan studied him. The man was solid, breathing, afraid in a very human way. No, Evan said gently. It's just a place. The man exhaled, relief flooding his face. Thank God. I was worried I'd miss. He stopped. What? Evan asked. The man frowned. I don't remember what I was worried about. Evan nodded. That happens. The man looked down the tracks. So where do I go? Evan gestured vaguely. Anywhere you choose. The man left, footsteps fading into ordinary night. Evan waited for the pressure to return. It didn't. Ruth called once. Her voice was steadier than Evan remembered. I thought you should know, there was a rumor. In another state. People said a ferry kept arriving empty. Evan closed his eyes. Does it still? No, Ruth said. It stopped. A pause. You didn't break it everywhere, she added. Just taught it something. Evan smiled faintly. Bad habits don't survive attention? That endings aren't mandatory, Ruth said. Some things can just trail off. They said goodbye without ceremony. After that, Evan dreamed less. When he did dream, there were no trains. Just open spaces that didn't ask to be filled. Years passed. The station aged. Paint peeled. The vending machine was replaced. Evan grew older in a normal way. Stiffer knees. Slower mornings. One evening, a young night attendant sat beside him on the bench. Did anything ever happen here? The kid asked. Like weird stuff? Evan considered the question carefully. Things used to move when they didn't need to, he said. Now they don't? The kid laughed, unsure what to do with that. Guess that's good. Evan nodded. It is. The kid stood and went back inside. Evan stayed. The wind moved the grass. A train passed through without stopping. The sound faded. On Evan's last night, the station was perfectly ordinary. No pressure. No waiting. Just the soft rhythm of time behaving itself. Evan sat on the bench and closed his eyes. For a moment, just a moment, he felt something familiar nearby. Not hunger. Not patience. Recognition. Not from a collector. From the world itself. As if it knew he had once told something no and meant it. Evan smiled. The clock ticked forward. Not to 2:17. Just onward. And nothing. No routes, no seats, no endings. Ever needed him again. Evan thought the story was over. That was the mistake. It began with a sound he hadn't heard in years. Not the hum of rails, not the sigh of doors, but a delay. A pause between two normal noises that lasted a fraction too long. A bird called. Then nothing. Then the echo of the call arrived late, warped, like it had taken a longer route to reach him. Evan opened his eyes. The station looked the same. Same bench. Same lights. Same night air with its faint metallic edge. But the feeling was back. Not hunger, not pressure. Expectation. Evan stood slowly. His knees complained. Time had taken its due from him, but his awareness remained sharp. Not again, he said aloud. The word again seemed to settle into the space around him, testing the air. Somewhere far away, not down the tracks, not down the road, something acknowledged him. Not with sound. With attention. It didn't arrive. It didn't announce itself. It simply was, the way a shadow is when you finally notice it's been there the whole time. Evan felt it behind his thoughts, not inside them, but close enough to warm them. You taught me stillness, it said. Evan closed his eyes. Stillness isn't ownership. No, it agreed. But it is survivable. That chilled him more than any threat ever had. You stopped moving, Evan said. You unraveled. I fragmented, it corrected. Fragments observe. Evan exhaled slowly. Then you know this place isn't yours. It isn't anyone's, the presence replied. That's what you showed me. The station lights flickered, not failing, just blinking, like eyelids. Evan's chest tightened. Then why are you here? The pause that followed was the longest Evan had felt in years. Because habits don't want to end, it said at last. They want to fade near something familiar. Evan laughed softly, sadly. You came back to say goodbye. I came back, it said, to see if you were still here. Evan sat on the bench. Yes, he said. For now. The presence felt different now. Smaller. Spread thin. What happens, it asked, when you're gone? Evan stared down the tracks. They stretched into darkness the way tracks always had, no promise, no demand. Then the station will just be a station, Evan said. The road will just be a road. And the people who wait? Evan thought of Caleb. Of Ruth. Of the returners. Of the man who'd stood on the platform years ago, lost but free. They'll choose, Evan said. Or they won't. That's not yours to fix. The presence lingered. Then, almost shyly, and me? Evan closed his eyes. You already know, he said gently. You don't go anywhere. You don't stop. You just stop insisting. The air loosened. For the first time, Evan felt the presence not retreat, but settle. Not into him. Not into the station. Into nothing in particular. And that, somehow, felt right. Evan woke on the bench just before dawn. His joints ached. His mouth was dry. The sky was pale and undecided. For a moment, he couldn't remember why he was there. Then he smiled. Because forgetting felt earned. A freight train thundered through without slowing, shaking the platform the way real trains do, loud, rude, indifferent. Evan stood, stretched, and walked toward the office. The clock read 6:03 a.m. Perfectly ordinary. Years later, after Evan was gone, after the bench had been replaced, after the station was renovated and modernized, someone painted over a small scratch in the concrete near the platform's edge. They didn't know it marked where a rabbit once sat. They didn't know why the air felt calm there. But sometimes, late at night, when nothing happened exactly the way it should, when time hesitated but decided to move on anyway, people felt something they couldn't name. Not fear. Not comfort. Just the sense that nothing was required of them. And they slept better for it. There is no last train. No final route. No conductor waiting patiently for the lights to dim. There are only moments where the world asks if you will move. And moments where you decide not to. Somewhere, in the vast quiet that followed, a habit finally forgot why it existed. And somewhere else, a man once sat on a bench and taught it how. After Evan died, no one took his job for 3 months. Not officially. The posting stayed open, but applicants withdrew after interviews, citing vague reasons, didn't feel right, too quiet, strange energy. One candidate said the platform felt like it was listening. The station functioned anyway. Trains passed. Lights stayed on. But the bench remained empty longer than expected. When Maya Torres finally accepted the position, she told herself the feeling in her chest was just nerves. She was 23. Fresh out of school. Night shifts paid more. On her first night, she noticed the clock immediately. It worked perfectly. That somehow bothered her more. Maya asked around town. Anything weird ever happen out there? People shrugged. Not really. Depends what you call weird. My uncle said trains used to stop here more. No one mentioned 217. But one old man paused and said, Sometimes it feels like someone already answered a question I forgot to ask. Maya started sitting on the bench during breaks. She couldn't explain why. It felt finished. Like a sentence with a period so firm nothing could add to it. One night she thought she heard breathing beside her. She didn't look. The feeling passed. At 2:17 a.m., nothing happened. Maya checked the clock anyway. She felt a brief, inexplicable relief. Then embarrassment, for feeling relieved at nothing at all. Ruth Caldwell passed through town once more years later. She stood at the platform for a long time, eyes closed. Maya asked if she needed help. Ruth smiled. No. I just wanted to see if the quiet was still honest. She left without explaining. Maya dreamed of open spaces. Fields without roads. Stations without schedules. Benches no one waited on. She woke rested. That unsettled her. One night the air paused. Just a fraction too long. Maya's breath caught. The moment passed. She never realized she'd almost been asked something. Far away, not here, not anywhere. Something old failed to complete a thought. It searched for a rule, found none, and drifted. A train horn sounded once in the distance. Not lost, not searching, just passing through. The station was renovated, the bench replaced, the clocks upgraded. Nothing returned. That was the strangest part. No one disappeared. No one waited too long. No one walked the road because they felt they had to. People left when they chose to. If you are listening now, nothing is calling you. Nothing is keeping score. The route ended not with a stop, but with permission. The world will move tomorrow. Tonight, it does not need you. Sleep. You are not late.